Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. Chapter 13. I slipped through the sleeping house as silently as a needle through lace. Outside, I waved farewell to the sleeping topiary. As I walked, the sky lightened. On the edge of Jen, I gave a baker his first sale of the day, 2 currant muffins and 2 loaves of traveler's bread, in exchange for Hattie's wig, which he declared the finest he'd ever seen. He'd never heard of Waxy, but he said there were several giant farms up north. "I hear they bake cookies as wide as my waist," he said. He drew a map for me in the flour on his pastry board. The road would fork after I left Jen. The right-hand fork led back to Frail. The left fork was the one I wanted. My first landmark would be the Elves' Forest. After the forest, I would come to another fork. The road to the left, which I was not to take, led to the fens, where the ogres lived. The road on the right would take me to the giants. When the cows became as big as barns, I would be there. It didn't seem that far on the pastry board. My fingers could travel the distance in a trice. The baker thought the trip would take 5 or 6 days by coach. "How long do you think it would take to walk?"
"Walking?" He started to laugh. "On foot? Alone? With ogres and bandits roaming the road?"
Beyond Jen, I left the road, following it but too far away to be seen from it. I didn't fear pursuit by Madame Edith, who would probably conceal my disappearance for as long as possible in hopes I might return. The baker's worries about ogres and bandits I thought exaggerated, since a solitary travel would hardly be worthwhile prey. However, I was wary of strangers. With my curse, I had to be. I wondered if I would meet Char on his way to the fens. I liked thinking he might be near, but whether he was ahead of me or behind, or whether he had taken this route at all, I had no idea, and I wished my magic book had told me more. The road was little trafficked, and I was too happy about my escape to feel much fear. I was free of orders. If I wanted to eat my breakfast under a maple tree and watch the day grow between its leaves, I could, and did. If I wanted to skip or hop and run and slide on dew-wet leaves, I could, and did. And when the mood took me, I whistled or recited poems that I made up on the spot. I spent 2 glorious days this way, the best since before Mother died. I saw deer and hares, and once, at twilight, I swear I saw a phoenix rise, trailing smoke. On the 3rd day, I began to despair about reaching the giants in time. I hadn't even come to the elves' forest. If I had any chance of getting to the wedding, I should have passed the forest on the 2nd day. Unless the baker had been mistaken about the distance from the forest to the giants. Perhaps they were much closer to each other than he thought. On the 4th day, I finished my last bit of traveler's bread. The land changed from steady fields and low shrubs, and I began to despair about reaching the giants before the newlyweds celebrated their anniversary. On the 5th day, I knew I was doomed to wander the endless barrens till I died. On the 6th day, there were no more trees, but I was too dazed by hunger to realize their significance. I was searching the ground for lacy flowers of the wild carrot when I caught a shift in the shadows ahead of me, a flash of motion among the trees. A deer? A walking bush? There, I saw it again. An elf! "Kimek imispud," I called. It meant sun and rain, or hello in Elfin. "Kimok imuskud." An elfin woman approached me hesitantly. Her robe was woven in a dappled pattern, the shadow of leaves on the forest floor. "Speak Elfin?" "Yungar." "A little." I tried to smile at her, but her expression was so solemn I couldn't. She stepped closer and stared at me. I met her gaze and hoped I didn't seem watil, sly, too. Her eyes poured into me. I was sure she knew every one of my unkind thoughts, knew about the theft of Hattie's wig, knew each time I made my finishing school mistresses uncomfortable, and knew I hadn't had a bath since I'd left Jen. "Moodlane!" She smiled and took my hand. Her fingers felt waxy, like a leaf. She led me to Slannon, the elves' chief trader, who spoke Curian fluently. He was the one Father had mentioned in his letter. He confirmed that the baker's map was accurate. I didn't say anything, but my face must have shown how bitter and disappointed I was. "You will join your father at the giant's farm?" he asked. I nodded. But I am not hurrying to him, I blurted, then stopped.
You seek something else from the giants.
His amber eyes searched my face. Someone I must find. I must find her. Slannon patted my arm.
Elves will help. In the morning, you will see. But you must spend the night as our guest.
He smiled, showing pale green teeth. I smiled back, reassured, although one wouldn't expect green teeth to be reassuring. The elves were the same height as humans, with their mossy hair and green skin tinged with orange for the coming autumn. They were no more frightening than a pumpkin vine.
And now, please join us for our evening meal.
We sat at a table with 12 elves, who only knew a little Kyrian, but with my bit of elfin and gestures and laughter, we cobbled together a language understood by all. Their supper was more drink than meal. The appetizer was lemon parsnip soup, followed by turtle barley soup, the main course, succeeded by a soup of chopped raw green vegetables, the salad course. Dessert was a fruit soup. It was all delicious, even though my jaw wished for something to chew on. When we finished eating, Slannon said the elves liked to sleep soon after nightfall. He led me to my sleeping place. We passed the elves' nursery, where clusters of small hammocks hung from trees like branches of grapes. 2 adult elves, one with a flute and one singing, threaded their way through, the singer occasionally rocking a group of hammocks gently. When we reached the oak from which my hammock hung, I asked for a lantern to read by.
What book is better than sleep?
Slannon asked, calling for a light. I had been afraid to show Mandy's present to anyone since Hattie had taken Mother's necklace, but now I produced it from my carpet bag. Slannon opened it. The Shoemaker and the Elves returned as the first story. He roared with laughter.
We're so tiny here. The elves can fit inside a shoe.
He looked through the rest of the book, admiring the illustrations and reading parts of different stories. Then he turned back to the Shoemaker and the Elves, but it was gone. In its place was a story about a walrus and a camel.
Fairy maid, he cried. This is precious.
He returned it to me.
Do not read too late. You have a long journey tomorrow.
After 2 stories, I blew out my light. The night was clear. By shifting from side to side, I made my hammock swing me into sleep. In the morning, Slannon asked me to show my book to the other elves. To them, it was written in Elfin. They were enchanted and might have read all day except Slannon stopped them.
You have given us much pleasure, he said, and now we'd like to show you something wonderful too.
He lifted several packages onto the table he used to display goods for trading. Then he began to remove their oak leaf wrappings. Are these agulin? I asked when a bit of pottery emerged.
You've heard of him, Slannon said, sounding pleased. Yes, he made them.
A nut dish was unwrapped first. Molded into the shape of a centaur, it rested on the table, but was in motion nonetheless. More than in motion, the centaur was in motion. His head thrust into the wind, his arms hugged his form, his mane and tail streamed back, and without moving such as Aguilin's skill, his legs beat the ground. Next came a dragon-shaped coal scuttle that glowed golden orange. Somehow, the air shimmered around his foot-long flame. Its ruby eyes were windows into the interior furnace. I was afraid to touch the beast for fear of being scorched. But my favorite was a stirrup cup, molded in the shape of a wolf's head and shoulders. With the head lifted and mouth pulled into an O for long howl, the ridges of the pottery for his fur were so fine that each hair was defined. I felt the tension in his shoulders where the cup ended, and I imagined the rest of him sitting but erect, with excitement running through him from his big paws to the end of his plumy tail. I loved his howl, which I could both hear and feel, long and plaintive, woebegone and heartsore, filled with yearning for what used to be and for what would never come again. He's beautiful. They're all beautiful. They don't look as though someone made them. They look born. Slannon began to wrap up the pieces again. I hated to let them go. Wrap this one last, please. I touched the wolf's nose. When he finished, Slannon handed the package of the wolf to me. father had made clear that an agilon was worth a great deal. "I can't accept such a valuable gift," I said in my best manners mistress manner, but my hands closed around it.
"You have," Slannon said, smiling.
"We like to give our best pieces away sometimes, when we find people who love them." "Thank you."
"Don't cry."
Slannon gave me a green handkerchief. He looked at me consideringly.
"Sir Peter is a witty man and a shrewd trader, but if he had admired our things as you do, we would have been gladder to let him have them."
"But he told me that you are the best potters."
"He should have told us. How can I exchange this gnomish copper stew-pot for such paltry vases?" he'd say. "The workmanship doesn't compare," he'd say.
And father had thought Slannon a poor trader. My gift was packed on a fat pony, along with enough food to last until I reached my destination. More elvish generosity, although the pony was alone. "Vib ol peswadu," Slannon said in parting. "Stay in the shade. With any luck, you will reach the giants in 3 or 4 days." But I had no luck.